Congress does not have a balanced budget or a way to reduce our $16 trillion deficit because of an agreement that was made in August 2011, sequester will take place, which means about 10% cuts across the federal government. So it will hit everywhere, which is also holding up the Jobs Act. Now, those in Congress who wish to see this are doing it and standing on principle alone that they think we need to reduce our spending as a government, which I agree with. I think we need to reduce our spending as a government. However, because we are seeing in our economy fragile economic progress, I think last month home sales were up 10%. We're seeing unemployment continue to slowly tick down. We're seeing new jobs created. It's fragile economic progress. I do not want to see sequester happen. Their economic advisors from the Congressional Budget Office are saying that sequester could cost us, in just 2013 alone, 800,000 to 1 million jobs because of the layoffs that will occur if the federal government has to have across the board 10% cuts. So in law enforcement, we call this type of behavior murder-suicide, where you are willing to shoot someone else and then shoot yourself because you have nothing to lose and you kind of want to make a point. I think those in Congress who want to have sequester on principle alone are participating in murder-suicide. They don't mind what it's going to cause themselves because they'd rather make the larger point that we need to drive the government into a ditch in order to fix it. And I think we're talking about people's lives, and we're talking about meat inspectors who will be laid off. And when meat inspectors are laid off or furloughed, that means the flow of food services in our country slows down, and that hurts folks who are in agriculture. And agriculture is California, one of California's largest economic drivers. It means if you're traveling, there are going to be fewer TSA agents. And we already know how efficient the TSA is at the airport. And so there are a number of jobs that will be affected by a sequester. And so I think we can have measured cuts in the government, take measured investments in the future, and avoid this sort of man-made sequester. This is nothing that we cannot solve by working together. It is something that literally was man-made. It's not in the Constitution. It's something we can undo, but there are those in Congress who want to see the sequester happen. And unfortunately, Carl, that is holding up the Jobs Act. So, I believe the opportunities to invest in science, technology, upgrading America's infrastructure, that's what's going to create new jobs in our area. One of my first bills that we're working on and will be introduced this spring is a Main Street revival plan where we plan to offer a tax deferral a federal tax deferral for any new business in a Main Street area of America. And this would really help Hayward, Alvarado part of Union City, Fremont, also in the Niles area, and across the district. And it would be a FICA tax deferral, so your Social Security and your Medicare taxes that the employer pays on the employer side of the contribution. We are suggesting a 1 to 2 year deferral for any new business under 50 employees who starts up in a Main Street corridor. Because right now, if you drive down B Street in Hayward, you'll see there are a number of vacancies in B Street or Foothill and Mission. And what I would like to do is do whatever we can as the federal government to assist small businesses to go in to our Main Street areas. And if we can defer the federal payroll taxes and have them pay them in years 2, 3, 4 down the road, this would end up being about $8,000 to $10,000 per employee. And right now, it's very hard for small businesses, as you probably know, to get capitalized. And this is one area where I think the federal government can take a measured risk on bringing new businesses in and then collect the money and the taxes on the back end. I'm also supportive, I don't know if anyone here belongs to a credit union, just by a show of hands. So credit unions right now are only able to lend out 12.5% of the capital that they have in their individual credit union. So they have a cap on what they can lend out to small businesses, and many of them will hit that cap, and it doesn't allow them to compete with community or national banks. And so I'm also supporting lifting that cap up to about 25 to 28% to allow our credit unions to lend more money to small businesses. And so that's another area where I'd like to see a thawing out of these credit freezes that we're having in our community. So, but happy to take another question.
My understanding is that every year there are at least 5. My understanding is that every year there are several bills which are introduced on immigration reform.
On immigration reform.
And somehow they don't make it. And part of the problem seems to be, the approach which Congress men and women take, based on our party lines. So my question is that why can people who are senators and congressmen and congresswomen, they can think of themselves as Americans first and stop being so stuck on party lines? And secondly, is it possible to develop a system where if there are 5 bills introduced by different senators or congressmen, that they can find the common ground in all of those bills and perhaps pass those bills first so they can get some of the parts out of the way? And some part of the question is how much money is being spent on the enforcement? Because my understanding is the Department of Labor spent only 3% time and resources on enforcement. So, passing the immigration reform, legalizing people, or setting systems in place where there's more efficiency in the current laws is fine. However, the fact remains that somebody who comes here and gets out of status or enters illegally is still breaking the law. And that's not good. That's not accepted. Your thoughts?
Sure. So there's 2 questions. The first is about the number of bills. So every year there are a number of bills, and because of the results of the presidential election back in November, that seems to be the impetus for immigration reform. I believe, this is me putting my political hat on, I believe that those in Congress who have in the past opposed immigration reform, they can see the writing on the wall and they can do math, and they can see that they will continue to lose seats in areas like Texas and Florida and Arizona and New Mexico and California if those in Congress choose to continue to not want to kind of change with the times and stop measures of reform. I mean, we heard a presidential candidate say in the 2012 campaign that his immigration plan was self-deportation, meaning that we would have a process where people would self-deport, and that's just not realistic. We have 12 million undocumented persons living in the United States, and many of those folks are not folks who came across the borders or entered our country by a border crossing or were smuggled across the country. A large chunk of those folks were people who came to our country and overstayed their visa and are here now. And our office deals with those cases all the time, and we have an immigration caseworker who's working with those cases. So to the question with the bills, I know there's a bipartisan group working together right now to take all of the bills, package them together, and we're trying to find a way to have, because I think there is consensus. And I was sitting next to a Republican during the State of the Union, and to my surprise, he stood up and clapped and applauded the president during the part where the president talked about comprehensive immigration reform. And I kind of joked with him, and I said, wow, I didn't expect you to stand up for that. And he said, no, I come from a very rural area with a lot of migrant workers, and I'm a first-generation American, and I believe we need immigration reform. So I think the movement is going in the right direction. Now, to your question about whether the Department of Labor enforces the laws as it is right now, I'm happy to get your information and get back to you on the exact amount of money spent. I don't know that off the top of my head, but that's a number that's easily attainable. But I would say that we have seen over the last 4 years a decline in the number of people, the number of immigrants who are coming to our country because of it really comes down to just economics, because the economics here are not penciling out, and it doesn't make as much sense, especially for migrant workers to come to the United States. So there has been a decline in folks coming here. But any plan that would occur, and I'm on the Homeland Security Committee, that's the committee that would deal with immigration reform along with the Judiciary Committee, it has to be one that identifies who these folks are, and like I said, make sure that they're paying into our system, paying taxes, and getting in an organized line. And it's not going to happen overnight. I think folks who are immigrants accept that it's not going to happen overnight. But just as in the business community, the most valuable thing you can provide the business community from a government perspective is certainty. I think the most valuable thing you can provide to any immigrant here is a certainty of the process, and that's what I'm interested in.
Hello. This is the last question here, and Eric needs to leave, so please go ahead.
This is a very, very short question. Yeah. My question is sequester attached to the congressional paychecks as much as it will affect everyone else?
That's a great question. Sequester it's attached to the congressional office, but personally it would not affect congressional pay. And that is because the 22nd Amendment of the United States says that you cannot affect your own pay. So that's in the Constitution, and it says that Congress cannot affect your own pay. Now that was put into place because they didn't want Congress increasing their own paychecks. So it would only be able to affect, you can only pass something in the Congress that would affect the next Congress's pay. Now, I am supportive of what's called no budget, no pay, meaning it's our job to pass a budget in Congress, and if we don't do our job, we shouldn't get paid. And that is certainly against my own economic interest, because before coming to Congress, I worked as a public employee in the district attorney's office. And so every year when they do the ranking of the richest members of Congress, in the most recent one, I am tied for 435 out of 435 as, with many members of Congress who came without wealth or a trust fund type background. So, but I still believe that we should not get paid unless we pass a budget, because our staff is not going to get paid. It's Sarah's eyes just lit up, who's on our staff. There will be cuts to staff salary until we do something. So it's something that we have to act on, and again, it's a man-made problem. This is something that we can solve, and it doesn't have to happen. And that's why I think that you're seeing members of Congress just literally laying themselves down on the train track, wanting to derail the fragile economic progress that we're having. And so I'm hopeful that there can be a solution. If I'm being realistic, I think there is going to be a short-term sequester, and I think those who caused it will learn very fast once you start to see what it does to agriculture and the flow of goods, whether it's through our ports or our airports, start to slow down. They're going to see that there's going to be a backlash for it, and there's going to be a political price to pay. It's unfortunate that it has to happen, but we're talking about real people's lives here. Real, a million jobs, up to 1 million jobs, that's a lot of people, and that's going to send our economy back into a downward spiral. And I think it's just awful that the only thing right now, the only substantive thing that stands in the way of economic progress in the United States is the actions of a few in Congress, and that it shouldn't be that way. So.
Okay. And I'm sorry, Saeed from Quick Breathing Hayward is one of the leaders on the Hayward Chamber of Commerce. We'd like to have a question. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, it's okay.
Hi, Congressman. What bothers me as a small businessman and a new businessman is the line of credit. Because of the current economic situations, the banks have basically clamped down on that. They got bailed out, but when it comes to helping small businesses, purchasing equipment or do other stuff, they don't get any credit if they are not creditworthy or whatever. What kind of solutions can you, or is there a way to make the banks work with us? That's something I'd like to know.
It's a great question. The question is about making the banks work. And as you know, after the 2008 economic crisis, a bill called Dodd-Frank, you've probably heard of Dodd-Frank. It was a bill passed in Congress that put tighter restrictions on the banks and how they would lend money. And the intentions, I think, were very good because you were seeing excessive risk being taken in Wall Street, especially when it came to what were called mortgage-backed securities that were being traded. And now, unfortunately, the unintended consequence is that it has really frozen lines of credit, especially for small and medium-sized businesses. And it's actually hurt more than anything small and medium-sized community banks. They are the ones who are having the toughest time lending because of the pressure being put on them by federal regulators. So I am in favor of revisiting Dodd-Frank and making reforms that still hold Wall Street accountable, still have systems in place to make sure you don't have the excessive risk-taking that was taking place, but we still need to thaw the markets. And that's why I'm supportive of this. One of the first bills that I am working on is the one I was talking about earlier with the credit unions, allowing them to lend more, just to allow them to be competitive with banks, because there is a cap right now at about 12.5%, where they are capable of lending more money, but there is kind of an anti-competitive law in place that prevents them with competing with banks. And I think increasing what the credit unions can lend out would be helpful, because many small businesses do use credit unions. And so that is one area. Also, our office, please contact us. We work very closely with the Small Business Administration, as well as the EXIM Bank, the Export-Import Bank of the United States. And the Export-Import Bank of the United States has a number of loans available to assist small businesses who are participating in the export market. And our country right now has a goal of doubling our exports over the next 5 years. Right now, today, we have what's called a trade deficit of about $40 billion, meaning every month we bring in more goods and services by about $40 billion than what we export. And so 95% of the world market is outside of the United States. And if we are going to increase our global competitiveness and have more jobs that are sustainable, high-skilled jobs in America, we have to be able to compete on that world market. So the Export-Import Bank is something I've continued to support, funding them so that they can provide loans and grants to small businesses to start up, because it's very, very complicated to export goods. There's a number of laws and tariffs and treaties that must be followed and honored, and navigating that early on is difficult, but our office is equipped to help. And so please do let us know how we can be helpful. I want to thank you again. I just started. I've been in Congress for 45 days, and it's been a real honor and privilege to serve. I have a lot to learn. I'm not naive to that. It is like drinking out of a fire hose in many ways, but I am up for the job. My mom told me when I was a kid, and I still apply this today, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and you should use them in proportion. So I want to listen, I want to learn, and I want to act for you. And I hope you invite me back, and I hope you've let us know how we can be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.